You better watch out, dreadlocks. You better watch out, because we have come for you. Sorry. It's my mother's tongue again. It comes through. You'd better watch out, because we're not playing.
It's got the history with the fathers, the two fathers that were just iconic British fighters, great fighters. So it's got everything to draw the people in.
The original rivalry began in 1990. Chris Eubank Sr. and Nigel Benn were two British icons, both champions, both warriors, both carrying the weight of their egos and their nations on their backs. Benn was the Dark Destroyer, a wild, explosive knockout artist with an aura of menace. Eubank Sr., on the other hand, was flamboyant, articulate, and icy in the ring. He styled himself like a villain from a British drama: top hat, cane, monocle, and a refusal to smile.
Or 8 pounds? You better watch out, dreadlocks. You better watch out, because we have come for you. Sorry. It's my mother's tongue again. It comes through. You'd better watch out, because we're not playing. We're real, and we are a terror. And the procedure will be parliamentary. Rastafari.
Their first fight ended with Eubank Sr. stopping Benn in the 9th round, handing him just his second career loss. That victory turned Eubank into a household name and a British boxing superstar. 3 years later, in 1993, they met again in front of millions. That rematch ended in a controversial draw, and with no trilogy fight, their rivalry remained unresolved. The rivalry was one of fire and pride, not only about boxing ability, but about ideology. And while the fathers have aged, the tension between them has only grown deeper with time, especially now, as their sons are stepping into the spotlight to settle unfinished business.
Oh mate, that'd be legendary. That'd be legendary. I'd love that.
We know that your dad has had two very, very famous fights in the 90s with Chris Sr. You're, 3 or 4 weight divisions away from Chris Eubank Jr. at the moment, but you are 19 and you will continue to grow and you will continue to put weight on. What chance of you fighting Chris Eubank Jr. at some point in the future?
Oh mate, that'd be legendary. That'd be legendary. I'd love that. You could, but there's so many obstacles I've got to get first before we can even consider that. Yeah. So far, it's just a fantasy for the British public. But who knows? Who knows what the future holds?
The Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn matchup was originally slated for October 2022. Fans were electric. The sons of two bitter rivals were about to reignite a generational war. But just days before the event, a shocking revelation rocked the sport. Conor Benn had tested positive for clomiphene, a banned fertility drug that can boost testosterone levels in men. Benn vehemently denied knowingly taking any banned substances and blamed the test result on egg consumption, a claim that left many in the boxing world both bewildered and amused.
I'm sitting up here today on a stage with two of the scummiest characters in boxing, in my opinion. A drug cheat and a man who did everything in his power to help him get away with it. So me throwing an egg at somebody who absurdly claims that is the reason why he failed 2 drugs tests because of contaminated eggs, I think that's light. And I think that's deserved. He deserved the embarrassment of what happened. If I had an opportunity to do it again, I would.
Scientists pointed out that while clomiphene is sometimes used in egg production in other countries, the quantities required to fail a drug test were astronomically high. As the British Boxing Board of Control launched a formal investigation, the fight was postponed and at one point appeared completely scrapped. But after months of legal battles and appeals, Benn was cleared to fight, though critics accused the authorities of prioritizing money over safety and fairness.
It's a mismatch. It's an entertaining matchup.
Why is it a mismatch?
Because of ability, because of weight classes. Chris Jr. is a middleweight and a super middleweight. He's naturally a super middleweight. So, he's having to starve himself to come down and, with all the catch weights and all of this stuff, it's a mismatch.
Okay.
He is operated at world level. He's been in with the likes of George Groves and, the list goes on. It's a mismatch in ability and weight class.
Beyond the doping drama, another issue loomed large: the fight's weight clause. Eubank Jr. is a career middleweight, accustomed to fighting at 160 pounds. Conor Benn is a natural welterweight, typically weighing in at 147 pounds. To make the fight happen, the two camps agreed on a catch weight of 157 pounds with an additional rehydration clause that limited how much weight Eubank Jr. could regain between weigh-in and fight night.
For the Metro newspaper, and in that interview, Conor walked in, and I said to Conor, and I was saying to Nigel, please, don't do this. You know what it is to, my son is 33. For him to drop 3 pounds beneath 160 puts his life in danger. And Nigel said, sorry, if he doesn't take the fight, if he's above that, then he's going to have to pay a forfeit of £300,000. And I said, well, I'm very happy to pay that. So please, stand down. I was speaking to both of them, and Nigel said, no, he's not standing down. He said he signed a contract, he's a grown man. So I said, Nigel, please, my king, please, don't do this.
Chris Eubank Sr. was furious. He claimed the forced weight cut was dangerous, even life-threatening. Eubank Sr. said he believed his son's health was being jeopardized by greedy promoters, and that he was willing to pay a 6-figure fine to cancel the fight if it meant protecting his son. The clash brought out raw emotions. Eubank Sr. compared the situation to the tragic death of Gerald McClellan, a boxer who suffered permanent brain damage after a brutal fight with Nigel Benn in 1995.
You lost to a fighter called Billy Saunders. You shouldn't have lost that fight. You lost it because you were disobedient to the plan that I gave you. You started fighting after the 6th round to prove to me that you could beat him at any time. I expressly put down in solid words, you are not fighting Billy Saunders, you are fighting the promoter. And you will not beat the promoter. As they say, you'd have to knock him out to get a draw. That's the humour they use, that's the influence of the promoters. And you gave him the first 6 rounds. As far as I'm concerned, the fight belongs to Harlem the Gold Eubank, and you should be fighting Billy Joe Saunders and record a win over him, which you should have in the first instance. What more can I say?
He made it clear. He saw history repeating itself, and he wanted no part in it. Still, Eubank Jr. stood firm. He insisted he could make the weight safely, and that the fight would go ahead with or without his father's support. Perhaps the most painful part of this entire saga has been the public breakdown of the relationship between Chris Eubank Sr. and Jr.
How is your relationship with your dad now?
We're in a weird, we're in a strange place in our lives in the moment. It's very hard to kind of, go through an entire career being with your old man and then to not have him around anymore in terms of, the boxing side of things. But I just felt that that's what I needed. I felt like I wanted to, and I would say this to him as well, I was like, listen, I'm going to write a book one day. The book can't be everything that my dad said I should do, I did. Mm-hmm. I've got to find out on my own. I've got to make my own choices. I've got to write my own future.
Once a guiding figure in his son's career, Eubank Sr. has become estranged from his son. In interviews, Eubank Jr. revealed that they no longer speak. He's shown no interest in my career or me for a long time, Jr. said. The rift has deep roots.
He was not happy with that decision. That's the start of it. Then you have the situation with my brother passing away. That affected him in a deep way, affected all of us.
I talked to him around that time, and I could tell he was profoundly impacted by that.
That's right. Mental health is a real thing. That incident, coupled with the fact that we were already not seeing eye to eye, destroyed a large part of the relationship. And it still hasn't seemed to have recovered, unfortunately.
Have you made any attempt to get back together with him?
Of course.
Has he rebuffed that?
Professional disagreements, personal tragedies, and a growing need for independence. Eubank Sr. took issue with his son surrounding himself with yes men and abandoning traditional training techniques. He pointed to conversations with David Hay, who revealed that Junior had stopped sparring altogether in training camps. Eubank Sr. lamented, "My son could have been a tremendous fighter, but he won't listen." The relationship worsened after the tragic death of Sebastian Eubank, Jr.'s younger brother, who passed away in 2021. Junior expressed disbelief that his father, a man who had already lost one son, could grow so distant from the rest of his family. "It's insane," Junior said, visibly emotional. "Especially after losing one child. I just don't understand it." This deeply personal conflict added an emotional weight to the fight that went beyond belts or bragging rights. It became about proving something not just to fans, but to family. And one of the most talked about moments leading up to the rescheduled bout, Chris Eubank Jr. slapped Conor Benn with a raw egg during a press event. He later explained it wasn't just a stunt, it was symbolic. "It wasn't just a slap with an egg," he said. "It was a statement."
That slap, I personally do not call it a slap. I call that a marketing stunt, and that have helped to publicize or market or sell the fight way more, because Chris had to do that, and he basically made the fight very, very personal. And now we don't have to say it's because of their father's legacy, but hey, Conor will say, "You slapped me and you tried to embarrass me, and then now I have to fight and show you that I am a better fighter and boxer than you." But I feel like also that is the best 100K Chris Eubank Jr. have ever spent.
It was letting the whole boxing world know, if you cheat, you'll get exposed. The board fined Eubank Jr. £100,000, an unusually large sum for what many considered promotional antics. Eubank responded by highlighting other fighters who had done far worse and faced far less severe penalties. Benn's father, Nigel, condemned the stunt. He said it brought shame to the sport and detracted from the true value of boxing respect, discipline, and professionalism. But whether fans loved it or hated it, it accomplished one thing: it made headlines.
You didn't just get slapped with egg in your face.
I'm just glad that Conor didn't get hold of him. That's why I'm glad that Conor didn't get hold of him, because Conor was going, son. But then I had the opportunity to go, then the big bounce come and chop my head off of me.
The egg incident went viral and ticket sales surged. With the drama aside, let's break down the fighters themselves. Chris Eubank Jr. is a rangy middleweight with elite athleticism and strong conditioning. He's capable of fighting at range, using his jab and long combinations to frustrate opponents. Under Roy Jones Jr., his style became more fluid hands down, slick counters, and wide-angled shots. Conor Benn, meanwhile, is a relentless, come-forward pressure fighter. He's explosive, aggressive, and always looking to close distance. His work to the body is vicious, and he carries surprising knockout power, even after moving up in weight. Teddy Atlas, legendary trainer and commentator, believes the fight will be a classic clash of styles. Eubank Jr. will try to keep it on the outside, staying mobile and picking Benn off with cleaner shots. Benn, on the other hand, will look to maul, rough up Eubank, and test his ability to take punishment after a tough weight cut.
My concern for Eubank is the amount of weight this boy's got to cut to come down to, I think the fight's made at 160 pounds, is that right? Right. So he's got to come down from 100, from whatever his walking round weight is. Let's say he walks around at 180 pound when he's out of training. That's like 20 pound weight difference, right? That he's got to lose. It's not safe. It's not. He can't possibly be at his physically strongest. He can't. And he's really putting himself on the line, right? Because when your weight weakened, I know I've been weight drained in fights previously. So I'm speaking from a point of reference. When you're weight drained, it doesn't matter what you eat on the day. It doesn't make you stronger.
One mistake, one lapse in judgment, and it could be over. Beyond the pride, this fight has massive financial and professional implications. Eubank Jr. is the bigger name. He's faced George Groves, Billy Joe Saunders, and Liam Smith. For that reason, he negotiated a 55-45 purse split in his favor. But Benn is still pushing for a more equitable cut. If Conor Benn wins, he redeems himself in the public eye after the drug test debacle and solidifies his place among the top fighters at welterweight and light middleweight. It could lead to fights with Jaron Ennis, Virgil Ortiz, or even Terence Crawford. If Eubank Jr. wins, he proves his doubters wrong, reasserts his dominance, and might even secure a legacy-defining payday against the likes of Canelo Alvarez. And if it ends in controversy or someone gets seriously hurt, it could set off a firestorm of debate about boxing safety, promotional greed, and the unchecked power of sanctioning bodies.